Christmas Day, there was a guy that tried to bring a bomb onto a plane, the Christmas bomber from Africa somewhere. All right. I wrote an article that incorporated a little bit about that story, and I just want to read you quickly. I have to take off my glasses to be able to read this. I'm sorry. All right. If you read the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill, the very first thing that it says is Title I, Border Security and Enforcement. All right, this terrorist from Nigeria he'd been denied a visa in Great Britain. He paid cash for his ticket. He had no luggage. And his father had warned us that his son had been radicalized, thus landing the terrorist on one of our watch lists. He was able to board the plane with a 10-year multi-entry visa. And if you read the CIR ASAP bill, Section 143, speaks to this exact thing. It reports on improving the exchange of information on North American security. It goes, I'm just going to kind of skip down and just hit the highlights. There's something called the Security Clearances and Document Integrity Act, technical and biometric standards based on best practices consistent with international standards for the issuance, authentication, validation, repudiation of travel documents, including visas. It goes into the visa processing issue. It talks all about that. It talks about sharing information with all these other countries. It goes into the terrorist watch lists. Everything that you can imagine that we would have wanted to have passed several years ago, and certainly before Christmas, is right here. And this was written well before Christmas. But the point is that nobody understands that immigration reform has a lot to do with a lot of different things that touch our lives and touch the world, a lot more than just amnesty. And had we passed this in 2006 or 2007 or whenever we had the opportunity to do it, this guy never gets on a plane. And I think that most people would agree that that is certainly an important issue that should have been taken into account, and nobody's even thinking about it. They're talking about, oh, we got to do something about these terrorists. Well, comprehensive immigration reform is the proper vehicle for dealing with these types of things, because that's what it's all about. It's all about homeland security, and 635 pages is going to be, by the way, the more progressive bill, because in the Senate, it's being written less progressively, shall we say. This was a Democratic bill in the House. The Senate version is being written by Senator Schumer out of New York and Senator Lindsey Graham out of South Carolina, who's a Republican and happens to be the only serving military officer in the Senate. It's not going to be a free pass to immigrants when Lindsey Graham gets a hold of this thing. All right. I had promised that I would talk a little bit about something else. Okay, when I was at the last city council meeting here, at the end of the meeting they had something that might have been in violation of the Brown Act, by the way, but they went ahead and talked about something which is not on their agenda, and it was about, well, why don't we have a meeting about passing our own immigration restrictive laws here. Well, that's kind of a path that's been gone down by a few different cities a few different times, and it has not worked out very well for anybody. I'm just going to, in no particular order, this is something that was written by Maldef, which is the Mexican-American legal defense people. In 2007, state legislators introduced more than 1,500 pieces of legislation related to immigrants and immigration. Well, the reason that happened is because in 2007, comprehensive immigration reform failed. It didn't get enough votes to override a filibuster. There were a majority of senators that wanted it, but, as most good bills go to the Senate to die, this one died by the filibuster rules. Okay, though some anti-immigrant activists have argued the ordinances have been effective in pushing undocumented immigrants out of their communities, these laws have in fact greatly harmed these states and local communities. So if the object is to take Santa Clarita and purify it and kick the can down the road to whatever's the next community over, then yeah, maybe you would be able to get rid of, all the or many of the undocumented immigrants if you really passed some very strict laws, but then you're also going to get rid of a lot of people that you would maybe want to have in your community. There are 50,000, give or take, immigrants that live in Santa Clarita. Going by the numbers, usually about 30% of those people are probably undocumented. So maybe you have 15,000 or so undocumented people, maybe more. But you have 35,000 of these people that are legal, that are maybe in mixed families. It's not like the undocumented live by themselves. They're all in mixed families. They might have citizen mothers or fathers or brothers or sisters or sons or daughters. And it gets pretty complicated when you try and kick them out, because then what are you going to do? You kick out a whole family, and eventually, well, for example, Prince William County, Virginia passed an anti-immigrant ordinance in 2007. Okay, with Latinos fleeing the combined effects of the construction downturn, the mortgage crisis, and the new local laws aimed at catching illegal immigrants, Latino shops are on the brink of bankruptcy. Church groups are hemorrhaging members, neighborhoods are dotted with for sale signs, and the once busy strip malls have been transformed into ghost towns. Okay, there's a city called Riverside, New Jersey, and they talk about what happened there. With the departure of so many people, the local economy suffered so bad that the next year, the town rescinded their ordinance, joining a small but growing list of municipalities nationwide that have begun rethinking such laws as to their legal and economic consequences. Arizona passed some very anti-immigrant ordinances, and they've weakened an already slowing state economy and forced many immigrants, both legal and illegal, to leave the state. Experts say the diminished workforce could further hurt the Arizona economy. In Colorado, the state's anti-immigrant law is costing the state millions more than it saves, and it has had a devastating effect upon the state's agricultural industry. The law has led to the use of prison labor on Colorado farms. So, you know, that's what it came to. They got rid of the undocumented people. They didn't have any workers for their fields, and all of a sudden they panicked, and they had to start asking prisoners to come work in the fields. Well, yeah. I guess they didn't ask.
They could have.
Okay. In Colorado, they spent $2.03 million on implementation of the new laws. The number of undocumented immigrants that they identified, 0. Costly to litigate. This is from the National Employment Law Project. Okay, a federal judge entered an order prohibiting the city of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. This is the first one, Hazleton, Pennsylvania, which is kind of reminds me of what's going on here. They were the ones that started this whole thing, and they wrote a very anti-immigrant ordinance. It was struck down by a federal judge, which is what's going to happen here again, by the way. If the city of Santa Clarita tries to do something, I think they've already tried it once before, it got struck down. It'll probably get struck down again depending on how they do it, but it's going to cost them a lot of money. I mean, I'm trying to remember. I think it costs $2.4 million to the city of Hazleton in attorney's fees to defend themselves, and they eventually lost.